Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union meeting. It is June 28th and it is 6:33. And do we need any introductions? I don't believe so.
I think we're good.
Okay. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Hopefully not. It's hot.
No, I don't think so. We do need an executive session just at the end, but nothing to add to the public agenda.
Elizabeth, you had your hand raised.
Never mind. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so I will take a motion to approve the minutes for May 24th.
So moved.
Second.
And who was that for, Wendy?
Nancy.
Okay. Were there any changes or clarifications or corrections to the minutes from May 24th? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from May 24th, say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Wonderful, thank you. We have public participation on items not related to the agenda. Elizabeth?
Well, it's an announcement, and I'd just like to announce that Chris Garnjost has stepped down from the Manasquettee School District Board, and therefore also from the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union Board. We thank him very much for his long years of service and loyalty and thoughtfulness.
And wise counsel.
Yes, indeed.
And editing.
Yes.
Are there any other announcements or public participation? Thank you, Elizabeth. We will move on to the superintendent's report, and that is David.
Yeah, I'm going to be fairly brief, just given the conditions tonight. But I will say that our summer food service delivery system kicked off today. There were some glitches, but not anything major. And so Craig had to redesign a couple of the routes. I saw that he sent out an email today. I think that got blasted to the people that needed to get blasted to in terms of those changes. But again, I really appreciate the work that goes on. Again, we were just joking before the meeting was called to order about jobs that you don't want to have in this kind of heat, and actually preparing food in our kitchen, which really the only form of air conditioning is to open a door, which doesn't work, as you all know. So hats off to all the people who are putting those meals together and delivering those meals. And I think I didn't get the number from Craig today, but I'll certainly get that out to everybody once we do get it. Summer Academy starts on July 6th. I see Katie here. I don't know, Katie, whether you wanted to, just give an update on where we are with Summer Academy.
We had our second big staff meeting with everyone today. People are going in the buildings this week to start setting up, and we have the busing all set, food program all set, HCRS morning and afternoon program set. This will be a busy week. I think where all the pieces are coming into place. I'm sure there's pieces and parts we'll have to figure out next week, but been thrilled. We have still about 100 students attending from all 4 schools, and approximately 45 to 50 staff, including our HCRS partnership as well. So it's been pretty busy.
Yeah, I see Nancy. Did you want to ask a question about the academy, Nancy?
Yes, are you going to contact parents to let them know how and when and all of that stuff, or has that been done?
Emails have been sent out to all the parents. I think they either went out Friday or today. I remember reading them, letting parents know about drop-offs, pickups, and busing. So that all did go out. I received some clarifying emails from some parents, so I know that that's happened. If you know of anybody who didn't get the email that thought they should get it, have them reach out to me so that I can follow up and send it to them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and certainly the transportation was a little tricky because we do have to provide some door-to-door service because if that is, if that's in an IEP as a related service, then we have to keep doing it throughout the summer. I sent out an email. I don't think I copied board members, but I did send out an email after the governor lifted the emergency order because our academy will be filled with a lot of kids. And what we're doing is basically following the AOE, VDH, and CDC guidelines that we are certainly requesting that those unvaccinated persons, which would include students, would continue to wear a mask. We're not requiring it. And the same thing with adults, that adults who are not vaccinated would continue to wear a mask, but it's a request, not a requirement, because the AOE has told us that we can't impose restrictions that are stronger than those that have been proposed by the VDH or the CDC or the AOE. So I think the summer will be a good test. We are keeping the numbers small and the pod structure small, partly because we want to be careful, but also because the recovery effort is pretty intensive. Even though we want to make sure that the kids enjoy their time this summer, it really is focused on some pretty serious instruction and trying to move kids, especially those kids who are struggling all year along the spectrum of performance. So I think that's our game plan, and we'll see how we do. We're certainly going to be taking a lot of data throughout the summer, and we'll continue to do that right into the fall. Bill Yates, did you have a question? Did I see your hand go up or no? No, not up. Did a hand go up?
Rebecca and then Anne Marie.
Thank you, Amy. That was my question. I had two questions. One was, is there going to be data that is going to be taken before and after, and will we have an opportunity to hear what you found at the beginning with the students, and what sort of advances were made during the summer? And the second thing was, if I'm not mistaken, you said the academics would be in the morning and the recreation or social emotional will be in the afternoon. Is that correct?
Yes. So to answer the first part of your question, Rebecca, we are giving all of the students the summer TMPs within the first week, the first 2 days, second and third day. And then we're also asking teachers to supply work samples or data based on how much students are, let's say independent reading or a writing sample that they did or some sort of project throughout the 5 weeks. We're looking at reducing the amount of regression that typically happens over the summer, which means as we compare, as students come back in the fall and take the fall TMP scores, that group of students looking at their rate of regression hopefully being less than the students that did not attend Summer Academy. But also remembering that we also have the most significantly, the students who needed the most help are the ones who are at Summer Academy. So already starting fairly, some of them starting fairly low. So we'll be able to compare their scores from the beginning of the summer to the fall. The second part is the HCRS camp and the 2 rec departments We have, and I know we have 20 students going to HCRS. I don't have the firm numbers in my head of how many are attending the Windsor and the Heartland Rec. But those were the only 3 options that we had available for students in the afternoon. So that would be more of the social emotional camp kind of activities that they'll do in the afternoon.
Yeah, and to that point too, Rebecca, we had hoped to, I give credit to BTG, Bridging the Gap. That's our organization that has worked with us for a lot of years. They tried heroically to find a director this summer, and they just couldn't do it. And so we were going to try to provide some more on-site kinds of activities. Our staff, and again, I don't blame them. Many of them did not want to work a full day. I mean, that's just the way it is, and I understand that. The summer goes by quickly, and they've had a tough year, so we didn't push it. So I think by the time we look at those who have registered at the rec and the HCRS folks, I mean, I think we'll probably be serving almost half of those kids that are in the camp, but we had hoped to serve them all, and that didn't happen. I see Amy, do you want to call on people? I see Anne Marie's hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne Marie.
I think you might be muted, Anne Marie.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that the rest of the SU board members knew, because there's something that we kind of found out at our Weathersfield school board meeting. Because we had all been under the impression that the summer academy was going to cover the same students that our summer school had in previous years. And it turns out that that isn't true. Summer academy is mainly, in fact, I think almost 100% for special ed students. I don't think there are very many that are not special ed students. So as far as like covering like social emotional help over the summer for regular ed students, this isn't providing that. And we were told that the same students, that they would be covered under this academy, and they're not being covered. So I just wondered if the rest of the boards knew that and understood that. I would love to see the data that Rebecca requested, as well as the final cost of this and the number of students from each school serviced by this at the end of it.
Yeah, we can provide that. Kate, do you want to talk? Katie, do you want to speak to the special ed versus the regular ed students? I mean, I know you said you're going to be serving about 100 kids. Do you know, are they 100% special education students?
No, they are not. The students were chosen initially the first round at the students were identified at the bottom 30% of their TMP scores. That was the only criteria we first used. And that's how we gained almost 3/4 of the students. Then we went back, and any other student that needed to be identified not based solely on TMP scores for other factors, which may have included IEP students, and largely that was. By design, students who are not doing well on their TMP scores are students who may already be in special education, but that was not the criteria. Part of our recovery plan was to address students who had significant loss or were struggling, and that's why we used the TMP scores, because that did not pick out or draw out particular students. So Anne Marie, to address that, I don't know in the past what scores that Weathersfield used. I also understand they used TMP scores.
We didn't limit it in any way. Anyone who wanted to come to summer school could come.
And so to that question too, any child and family that has asked since we had room, we have been able to accommodate. No matter what the reason has been, some siblings have joined that because one child was identified and their other child wasn't, we've done that. We've had other families, because of other reasons, been remote or whatnot. And as long as they could attend the majority of the summer program, at least 4 weeks, or 4 out of the 5 days, because part of what Rebecca asked about data, we need to have the students enough to have growth or to maintain the skills they have. So we didn't turn folks away. So there were several, as I said, the TMP scores, then IEP, and then any students or family that a school identified as well, we were able to accommodate.
I don't think most people knew that about you opening it up to others. I certainly didn't, never heard of it. I have a student, so.
We did not put a because of limited resources for staff, we did not put an all call out. We couldn't do that. What we did is we relied on the principals and teachers that brought other students or parents that asked. And we ended up being able to keep our goal of no more than 10 students in a class, and accommodating that way. So you're right. We didn't put an all call out. That would have led us down a path that we wouldn't have been able to accommodate all the people.
Yeah.
I think we ended up being, in Goldilocks terms, in the just right spot.
Yeah, I think too, the two things that weighed, certainly staffing was a big issue. I mean, and some folks, when we started this planning pretty early in the spring, and actually before we knew what COVID was going to be like in the summertime and what all the restrictions would be about. So that was part of the planning process. And staffing, some of our staff members changed their mind partway through the through the process, and so that did limit us in terms of how many students we could serve. I know that, and I don't want to speak specifically to Wethersfield, but I think, do you know how many students you're serving from Wethersfield? Do you have that data with you tonight, Katie, or no? No, you are on mute, I think.
I can go count if you give me a second. I think it was over 20 the last time I looked. We've gotten more paperwork in since the last time we had a meeting.
And I think, Anne Marie, it would be a good thing, at the end, like you said, to do some comparisons around data, and also to look at, how many students and what students were served, because we didn't serve anybody last summer, right? But to go back 2 summers, we would need to go back 2 summers and see who we served.
Just like in comparison to some other summer programs, like the Woodstock, I believe it's called Soak or something like that, where they're a lot more open to, and this just seems a lot more geared, especially since you have so many specialists, and like it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio, student to teacher in this, that it's much more of a special ed type program than to service regular ed students. I mean, a lot of these programs with having to do with social, emotional, and stuff like that, they hire, high school kids to help out and so forth. And this seems like we're hiring all very high-level professional type people to service. Just seems like the cost is very high for the number of students served.
Well, the other thing too, remember that what Katie did was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, but what she did is she integrated with the summer program the extended summer services, right? And those specialists that you're talking about, and I think you're probably talking about speech language pathologists and PT folks and OT folks, if they're needed as part of those extended summer year services, those are coming out of the special ed budget, not out of the summer budget. Katie would have been budgeting for that stuff anyway, because again, this year maybe a little more so because of, it's not surprising me at all that those kids that really made the cut and those kids that needed the most intense services were those kids who struggle anyway. And that was sort of the criteria. But I understand it. I think we have to look at it at the end of the summer, look at the data, and then and I think the extended year services, or the extended some ESY or EYS, I always get that wrong, but that's always going to occur. And how the special ed department bills that, they build it, right? And I think then the other part of summer programming and summer school, I really think, again, during the budget process, school boards have to look at how they want to service those other kids, because that's what we've always done in the past.
So to answer, there's 24 Wethersfield students from pre-K through 10th grade actually, attending. Plus we have some high school students as well. I don't have that list. And that's part of what the high school's running. And many of the students that are coming that are on IEPs would not have necessarily qualified for ESY services. We don't service nearly this number of students. So those are the students who are identified by their TMP scores as regular students, not through their ESY through IEP purposes. So I guess that's part of, all students were treated as regular ed students first, and what they needed based on our regular measures, and that not through the IEP process. So that's how we address it. And you're right, we're different than Soak and Windsor, or in Woodstock. We're not an established program. They've been running that program for years. And they also do a blended approach for students as well, for some students for ESY. I hope we can get that good in 5 years from now, and we can look at this and learn from what we do this year, see what everyone wants to do next year and beyond. But this is new, and we've got a lot of bumps to figure out. And I think that we can look at other models and see what other places do. But I think you would be surprised to look at many of the programs, Woodstock being one, as well as up in Rivendell, how many students would similarly meet the same criteria our students do. It's just not under such strange circumstances with ESSER funds, and with the goal of using our recovery funds, which I bet you Angie's ready, chomping at the bit to talk about, that this had to be part of our recovery plan. And that's what makes this a little bit different than what traditionally SOAP or the Rivendell program provided. So Angie, you looked like you might have wanted, I don't want to step out of turn, but
I just would like to have seen social emotional.
Yeah.
I just would like to have seen social emotional be a little more a part of this than what it seems like it is.
Yeah, and I think those are
For every student.
Yeah, no, I get it, Anne Marie. I get it. And that's part of what HCRS is doing with those 20 or 25 kids in the afternoon. Those were the kids that were identified with pretty intensive social emotional needs. But you know, it certainly isn't perfect. Angie, go ahead. Did you want to say something? And then I don't want to do it, because we're also going to get into the recovery plan and some of that summer planning later on in the agenda. I don't want to get too into it right now. Angie, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted. Is that good now?
That's better.
Elizabeth and I are trying to figure out our microphone situation here, our sound situation. So, I think that Anne Marie's concern about social emotional learning not being addressed in the morning part of the day is not exactly the way it's going to be, because the emphasis for academics is on project-based learning. And that by its very nature is a more nurturing kind of approach to learning. There may be some, what you might consider more typical traditional instruction. There might be some skill recovery. There might be some use of some worksheets, but we have asked teachers to look at project-based instruction that is high interest and for our struggling learners. So I do think by the nature of the instruction that's being designed, that social emotional is indeed being addressed in the morning.
Yeah. The other thing too is I'll just make one last comment, and this is certainly, we're not trying to be competitive here, but I'm going on my 10th year, and I don't remember us ever serving over 100 kids in the summer. I don't care where that, you know, I'm talking about combined now. I mean, I know there were, 20 or 30 here and, maybe 10 or 15 there. But so, I mean, again, these were difficult circumstances. And I think where I agree completely with Anne Marie, we got to keep an eye on it, and we've got to watch it. We got to look at that data, and then we got to decide what we want to do next year. If we're out of the COVID woods, then we've got to decide what part of this is going to be SY and what part of this is going to be just good summer programming, and figure out the best way to do that. Whether we do that together or each board budgets that separately, again, we can go in multiple directions with that and have that conversation. So if there aren't any more questions, the last thing I see under my report are resignations and hires. We can talk about that now in terms of SU employees, and of course most of those supervisory union employees are Katie's employees. So and Angie, but I'll put Katie on the spot again. Do you want to go over that now in terms of resignations? Because I see that under my report.
I have that chart that I made that I can share my screen and show, or just walk our way through.
Yeah, it might be good to have a visual, I think, just so people can see where we are right now.
Okay. This new Google thing has all the new different buttons, so forgive me as I try to find the right one. Where does it say share your screen now?
I think it's right next to the hand, to the right of the hand.
That's the picture. Thank you. 2 weeks off and I can't do anything. Let's see. Resignations and new hires. Okay, here we go. Can you see that?
We can see that.
Okay. So what I did was just listed our resignations first, and we received either letters or emails from folks, and I just gave the reason next to it. This is a kind of accumulation from early spring up until now. Donna Hatch has resigned as a Heartland special educator and has joined the Heartland staff as an interventionist. So we still reap the benefits. Liz Barker was our LEA working with our out-of-district students. If you recognize her name, she used to be the former SPED director many years ago, and came right before her retirement to help out, which was a big help this year. So she's actually leaving for retirement. Julia LaChance, I just realized I spelled her name wrong, was our speech language pathologist her first year in Windsor. She's moving. Diana Scott, same thing for speech language pathologist and early childhood special education, is moving closer to where her kiddos go to school. Laura Balch has resigned as the early childhood special educator, but is staying on in an SEI position in early childhood, working in our second pre-K classroom next in the fall. And Chloe Balch, HES special educator, has also resigned. And our new hires are the following. Sarah Wellman will primarily be working in the Mount Scottney buildings, as well as being the out-of-district LEA, replacing Liz Barker. Sarah Bullis is coming on as a special educator at Heartland. That was an unfilled position from 2019, 2020. It's not replacing anybody right now. It just was never filled last year. Stephanie Murray is coming on as a special educator, also at Heartland. She's replacing Dana Hall, who left mid-year. Naomi Goodwin is coming on as a special educator in Wethersfield. We're trying to address getting those caseloads a little bit smaller over in Wethersfield and working on early intervention. She'll be working with the K-1 students. And that was based out of what we had talked about last year, as we, by attrition, lose paraprofessionals, filling those positions as needed with special educators if possible. And so this was 3 paras unfilled from a year ago. We didn't fill this position, and so the need was at Wethersfield. Chris Keefe is coming on as a special educator in Windsor. He has been a long-standing behavior interventionist in the district, and he's pursuing his special ed endorsement and almost through with that. So he's coming under a provisional. He's replacing Janice McGuire, who retired at the end of last year, who we did not fill last year. Ryan Labella is coming on as a board certified behavior analyst. For those of you who don't know all those letters, he will be in Windsor 2 days a week and in Wethersfield 3 days. And he's replacing Vanessa Perry, who left mid-year. And our last new hire is Patty Acadia, who's coming up from Virginia as an early childhood special educator, replacing Laura Balch. So those are the new teaching positions. Sorry, I just had ice cream delivered. Apparently it's that hot out.
It's a good deal.
It's good to be at meetings apparently.
Yeah. So Katie, on the teacher level or the professional level, do you still have positions that are open?
We do. We have one speech language pathologist position that's still open. We have 2 special educator positions that are still open, although we're trying to figure out how we can creatively work our way through that, because I will tell you that we're not getting any bites at all. No one is. Special ed directors around us it's crickets. No one's getting bites. And the other is a part-time physical therapy position. We thought we had that filled, and that person decided not to sign their contract. So we may be working with Two Rivers, like we did this year with their PT, because they have a part-time one as well. So those are the main ones: the 2 teachers, the SLP for early childhood, and the PT.
Yeah, that's good. And how about, and I see Rebecca's hand, and how about support staff? I think there are still a few paraprofessionals we need to hire, correct?
There are, let's see, last count 6. We were very fortunate right before vacation. Thank you, Christine Bourne, who's here. She had an ad out for position there, and a couple of those people were also interested in SU positions. So we ended up with 2 wonderful folks that are coming on. And I'm starting to get a little bit of interest from folks who are returning to the workforce now. I'm going to ask the principals to send out within their letters asking if anyone is interested in becoming a support staff member. That in the past has yielded folks who are interested in either working in their kids' school or at least in general in the SU.
Yeah.
So not very many positions. We had very low turnover this year in support staff. Only a few people. I don't think we were more than 4 by the end of the school year for people leaving to go back to school. So knock on wood that I was very pleased with that, very low turnover.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, Amy, if you can see everybody's hand, but Rebecca has her hand up.
Yeah, I saw. Rebecca, go ahead.
I was just wondering, when you are seeking new employees, do you reach out to the colleges?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, students are graduating and they're looking for jobs. I'm just surprised that you just, even for support staff, it's a way into the school system.
Yeah. I can tell you, I have a direct line to UVM and to Castleton, as well as a couple of the other colleges for speech language pathology, and they're scooped up. Just to give you a window into it, my daughter was the only person who graduated from UVM this year with an early childhood special education degree as an undergraduate. 1. So, and she was in master's level classes, and everyone in her master's level class who graduated, there were 6 of them, they already had jobs. So we are knocking down doors, using all of the resources that we can think of, and that's actually networking with regional people too. We're all doing the same thing. Teacher education programs are not turning out teachers very quickly. Their numbers are significantly down. So we did have some good luck trying to recruit some people from out of state. Actually, Christine and I interviewed several. Couple of the folks that we snagged couldn't find housing. Really, they backed out because they were not going to be able to move. That happened on 3 different candidates that we offered jobs to. So it's a confluence of factors. I think any suggestions and networking people would like to do, I'd happily give them ads. And but it's a tough. It's not like it was 20 years ago when I went into teaching, and you would get 50 to 100 applicants for regular ed positions, maybe 20 for special ed. We're lucky we get 5 when we put ads up in February and March. And we did start in February and March with anticipated ads. So,
And I was just wondering, I know that that I don't know if that happens in Vermont, but in New Hampshire, when there is a shortage of a particular discipline, individual in a particular discipline, sometimes what they'll do is they will try and make it available to someone who doesn't have a specific special education degree, but it's something that you as a director can work with to help them get caught up in the area. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's something that you look at, but at times like these, I mean, maybe it's good to start thinking, okay, this may happen again. So what do we do?
The AOE has cracked down on our provisionals, which includes that 21 credits of their education has to already be in special ed, which is practically a master's, as you know, and there are no emergency special ed licenses. I will tell you, Woodstock is looking and starting a program with Castleton to grow our own locally. And we are looking as a regional group how to expand together with that. Plus, not only in coursework, but internship experiences. And I've been a part of a conversation with the AOE as well. So the flip is the federal government has really cracked down on provisionals and their requirements for special education teachers. There's no wiggle room. And same thing for SLPs and others. But so we have to, and then therefore our AOE has, for a little while there was some gray area. But not anymore. Dr. Baker and I have had several conversations about.
Begged.
Yeah.
They won't budge.
I used to work in higher ed. I don't know how many people know that, but that was my job.
And I was most recently, until the end of June, I was on the standards board for professional educators, and it was that board with AOE that approved provisionals, and as a board, that board was tightening up restrictions because it had been kind of loose, and we realized that it wasn't the best for students.
Yeah. But anyhow, I think, Katie, the list you just shared, I mean, given all the folks that, we're moving around, that's another phenomena with these generations, they tend to move around. I mean, my generation took a job and stayed for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. That's not happening anymore. So you have to be responding constantly. But we are looking regionally, and I think that's the best we can do. Angie, I don't know, did you have anything you wanted to add to around new hires? I mean, we've already announced Brittany Preston as the recovery coordinator, but did you have anybody else you needed to announce?
Yes, I just wanted to announce that Regina Davis was our literacy coach, and she retired at the end of this school year. And we have hired Patty Gray. She's a former second grade teacher at Heartland Elementary School, and she is coming to serve as our literacy coach, primarily in grades K4, but we'll expand that to grades through grade 8.
Yeah. Which then leaves an opening at Heartland. So that's, I see Christine Bourne smiling there, but it's sort of a little bit of a domino effect. I think that's it for me, just in the interest of time. I do have some things in executive session that I want to talk about, and maybe some comments under other agenda items, but I'm okay with my report now, Amy.
Okay, great. Thank you, David and Katie and Angie. Moving on, we are to items for discussion. And the first item this evening is the third reading of our anti-racism policy.
Yeah, so I did not attend the last meeting, so I don't, other than watching the tape, I don't have the background with this, but in terms of the comments that were made last time and the changes that were made, I do have the newest one, or the most updated one here. Third reading would be today. Well, I guess it's really what's the pleasure of the board? I know that
We got to it really late last time.
Okay.
We had a late running meeting, and we decided that we would push the vote off to this meeting so that we could take any public comment that people wanted to make.
Yeah, so maybe that's the best way to go in terms of public comment. The only other question I had for those members who are here tonight that are on the anti-racism task force, we're this summer we are, kind of diving into this policy, looking at this policy in terms of just, kind of getting a better sense of what some of the words mean. And as the person who's leading us through this, Dr. Melissa Crum said, it's hard to state your belief system around anti-racism unless you understand what racism is all about. So just kind of understanding those definitions, that language, so I also just didn't know whether people had strong opinions about whether or not we needed to get through that work first before we finally adopted this. Maybe not, but we can certainly take public comment or board comment.
Yeah, I would take board comment right now.
I wish we could just run over what were the changes that were made last time. Elizabeth or somebody referred to some changes. Maybe it was David.
I don't think we made any changes last time, Scott.
Oh, okay.
I think we talked about it. We talked amongst ourselves, and I think we had a general agreement that we were ready to pass it, but then we held off to this meeting because we didn't think it was fair because it was like at 9:30 when we got to
Right. It was
Right.
really late.
So
So
along
Rebecca,
those-
is your hand still raised? Do you have another comment?
It shouldn't have
or-
been, but but I'll
Okay.
take the opportunity to comment. I think I did see a couple of, under policy statement, I don't know if that was the prior meeting, but there were some changes that were made. On the policy statement number 2, it apparently read before, oppose teachings that perpetuate white supremacy, superiority, and/or privilege. And it was changed to oppose teachings that perpetuate white supremacy, superiority, and
Yeah.
white privilege.
Yeah, I think you'll see that in bold.
Right. Okay. So I think that was made.
That
And
might have
then
been.
there was another comment made, and it must have been at the prior meeting, but I do remember, I don't know if it was Richard, Scott, I don't remember who said it, but the superintendent shall identify outcome indicators as necessary to monitor this policy and shall provide a quarterly status report to the board. And that seemed to be another change. And aside from that, my sense is from our conversations and also from some of the statements that we make in this policy, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. We're hoping that this is going to be an ongoing discussion and conversation, that it's not going to be a policy that that's going to go into a folder. And at least that's how what I've walked away understanding this process to be, that it's going to be an ongoing process, even after accepting it. And I think that is the way that it should be. That's it.
Right. Rebecca, thank you. And I agree that this isn't a policy that is just going to go into a book and set up on a shelf. And that's why we're going to have quarterly updates on implementation and how things are going. So yeah, thank you. Bill, you had something.
I think you're on mute, Bill.
I clicked it too. I must have missed it by that much.
Yeah, you got it.
So I just want to, Rebecca said mostly what I wanted to say. The fact that my feeling towards this a policy hasn't changed. I think it's well written. I think it's simplistic. And I think that because of its simplicity and directness, it will allow that once the district gets into the reeds and it begins to implement what's in there, we will be able then to revisit if there is a need to make changes. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Bill. Would people feel comfortable, as this is our third reading? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the anti-racism policy?
So moved.
Second.
So who was that?
Elizabeth.
Sorry, Elizabeth.
And who was the
Bill,
second?
I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Did Mark
Mark?
have something to add?
Yeah, Mark, did you have your hand raised?
No, that was just going to be a second, but Bill beat me to it.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to approve the anti-racism policy. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd speak up again. It just might have been my understanding from the point when the SU board approved the seeking of a coach or an assistant, and then the announcement was made shortly after that that would be Dr. Melissa Crum. And I've been trying to educate myself about her methods ever since then, and I've also heard here about her. This probably oversimplifies it, but her real methodical or go slow approach to this topic in a community. And so I only bring that up in just that if there seemed to be a question a minute ago whether your consultant, because I'm not on that committee, your consultant would think this was a good idea to approve tonight. I think to hear specifically that in fact that is a good idea.
No, I don't think, and I don't know how others feel, I don't think the work we're doing with Dr. Crum precludes us passing this policy tonight. I think really what we're trying to do is, dive into some of those definitions, look at some of that work, and then decide how to go forward. I've got some thoughts either after we adopt this. I'm assuming the board will vote to adopt this, but I have a couple of quick questions after that in terms of our work going forward. So, but I don't think nothing that she has said, Scott, would indicate that we would need to stop this process.
Right. What my understanding of what we're now working on is to work on definitions and our understanding, so that by passing this policy, and then when someone says, well, what is this policy? We can say, this is exactly what it is. And we'll be presenting the policy to the community. Colleen?
I would say the same thing. I had thought initially when we first started the work with Dr. Crum that we might run into some things where we wanted to have second thoughts, some about wording, but I've since kind of realized it's a solid document. We may make changes through time, but we're going to dive into it. That's our kind of final piece of this workshop, is to really dive into piece by piece the policy. Each group is going to take a piece to really know it. I don't think it's to change it. We've actually gone through and of course she has, but we've gone through the document to a degree in the workshop.
Elizabeth? Thanks, Colleen.
Sorry, I was jumping the gun.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. We have discussed. All those in favor of approving the anti-racism policy, say aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? I want to thank everyone. Our anti-racism policy has been approved. This has been a lot of work by a lot of people, a lot of really late nights. We still have a ton, or 5 tons, I don't know, of work yet to be done with our communities, but we have a policy and we're moving forward. So I want to thank everyone for your tenacity, for your courage, and for all of your thoughts. Just careful consideration as we move forward. So thank you. And hooray. Elizabeth.
Thank you. I just wondered whether there had, I know that we just passed the policy, but I wondered whether, oops, sorry. I wondered whether David, you've looked at all into hiring an equity coordinator.
Well, that's good. That's exactly why I raised my hand. So, great minds think alike. So here we, yeah, first of all, I want to just acknowledge, along with Amy, this was a courageous move, because passing the policy is one thing, adopting and implementing the policy is another. To your point, Elizabeth, and that's what I wanted to talk about with respect to this policy. The administrative team has been talking about, because right now we do have the equity coordinator, I believe, anyhow, unless that changed in the ESSER funds. Is that correct, Angie? That's in there right now? Is that in ESSER? Or is that in the ESSER?
I think we have a placeholder in ESSER 3.
Okay, in ESSER 3.
So an idea for ESSER 3. I'll talk more about that process.
Yeah, as we go. But anyhow, what the administrative team, Elizabeth, has been talking about, just because of the relationship that we built with Dr. Crum, is we think the first step, and pretty much, and this probably is more about my role in this, but the administrative team feels that responsibility, is establishing those indicators so that we can measure the outcome of this policy and see how we're doing. We talked about a quarterly report, and I think those indicators are going to be critical. And I know that is some work that Dr. Crum has done, and I was just, we have our administrative retreat coming up in early July. I think it's July 12th, or 12th, 13th, and 14th. I think we'd like to put together a proposal to maybe extend, Dr. Crum's contract into the fall, so that we can at least get those indicators written and get those measurements written, get clear on that language, and then move forward. And I don't know how the board feels about that, or how you feel about that, Elizabeth, but that's what we've been talking about.
I think that sounds good, David. I also just want to remind you that there is a ton of money in the Vermont Community Fund for this specific, very specific purpose. So maybe use the ESSER funds set aside for Dr. Crum, and then use, find that, or get the Vermont Community Funds, because there's a lot out there right now.
Yeah.
Rebecca?
I'm thinking, David, that maybe also consideration can be given to, as opposed to creating a document that is going to be a description for someone. Maybe the principals can look at, administration can look at having someone who will work with be in that position and be brought along, as opposed to putting someone in the position after the position has already been defined for them. And I don't know if that's the case, but what I'm saying is that, as I mentioned before, this is going to be a process, and it's going to be ongoing. There's going to be a lot of discussion, community conversations. Wouldn't it be in some way valuable to have whoever is going to continue promoting that position part of that conversation, part of that process, part of that discussion? It's just a thought. I think it's really great, that the administration is looking at how's the best way to implement that. But I'm just thinking about giving some thought to, do you want to bring the person along in that process, or do you want to just plunk them in after you've defined something and had your conversations with Dr. Crum, which I think, by the way, is a great idea. I think she's a great consultant, and I have also been awakened to so much information as a result of our interaction and contact. So I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Thank you, Rebecca. Elizabeth, you had another comment?
I just wanted to agree with Rebecca. I think it's really important to try to get somebody in, or start the work of getting somebody in place, because and then let it naturally come as it will. Work with Dr. Crum and if you find the right person, have that person be part of the dialogue, but start the process so that we're not caught without anybody. Thanks.
Thank you. I agree that we need to be working on the process instead of waiting.
Okay. Look at what I did. I used your
But thank you. Is there anything more anyone wants to say with regard to the anti-racism policy? Hearing none, we will move on. I need to move here. So next up is board goals. And I have to move location.
While Amy's moving, I know that all of our individual district boards, have set some semblance of a retreat to look at their own individual goals and to set some goals. It's always a question of, the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken. I mean, do we let those things happen in July and then we come back and set SU goals based on a common understanding of those goals, or do we just talk about that tonight? Right now, I don't know that the SU has a retreat, quote unquote, scheduled. We haven't talked about that, or at least I haven't talked about that. But I'm open to any way we want to do this. But it would be nice to have 2 or 3 goals that we wanted to hold to this year. Sounds like we might have one around the equity and the anti-racism policy.
Well, what I was looking at, what I would like to see us do as a board is, hold on here, please.
Yeah, I think you might have froze a little bit, Amy. Not as good a
At least
spot
for
as
a moment until the rest of my family.
Now you're back.
Oh, yeah, am I okay?
Yeah, we got
I can turn off my video.
We're off.
Yeah, I'm going to turn my video off.
That might help.
So what I am thinking is just to have on a regular basis at a meeting, to have regular data updates, student progress, how our districts are doing in the SU, to review
I think we lost you again, Amy.
implementing the anti-racism policy. Okay.
Now we got you.
Okay. I'm going to turn off my mic and my camera, but I have to move to a different room in my house. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
You guys can continue talking as far as
Other thoughts?
Yeah, a board retreat, an SU board retreat. So I will be with you in a moment.
So just so everybody knows, what I heard Amy say is she'd like something around data management, right? And that's around, academic performance and probably some social emotional stuff as well, to have a regular segment quarterly maybe for that to happen. And the second thing is the implementation of that anti-racism policy, which would coincide with, the hiring of an equity coordinator potentially, and also coming up with those indicators. How are we going to know we've made success, or that we've, that we're being successful with that policy in making our schools safer and braver spaces? Did anybody else have any thoughts or comments about particular goals or how we might want to go about finalizing these goals? Elizabeth?
I was thinking more that we might consider the way that we evaluated you this year, David. We had a set of standards that we looked at, and those standards will be standards that we evaluate you on year over year and create goals for you year after year based on the same set of standards. And I was thinking that not all of the standards necessarily apply to the board, but we might consider holding ourselves to the same four of the standards that we evaluated you on, we could evaluate ourselves on and therefore create goals from. That was all I was thinking.
Yeah, those were well spelled out.
And Elizabeth, I think that's a good idea, because we never
look at ourselves. We never take a look at how we as a board are actually doing, or we never set long-term goals like we want to be number one in 3D printing in the state, but even though we are. But
yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, but Mount Escutney School District is, yeah.
But we never have long-term goals like that we have to. I mean, I guess Portrait of a Graduate is, but it's rather broad as a goal. It's a more of a,
right, and it's not
guiding document.
It's not it's a whole community. It's the schools, but I think. We have
articulated pretty clearly as a board that we want to keep our policy book up to date.
Yep.
So.
Yes. And so you're right, Scott. So part of the policy thing that I was talking about is to review older policies, but also to see how we're doing. Let's say just not necessarily an off-the-wall policy, but one that we don't really talk about in here. Let's say it was our weapons policy. Maybe twice a year to see how that policy has been implemented, if there's been any challenges, if we've even had to implement it. Or let's say it was our dress code policy. How is that being perceived by students, that kind of thing? To see how we are working with students, working with our communities, and how those policies are being implemented. So having a report on either a quarterly or semi-annual basis. But it also goes to say that we see a policy that is 3 years old. Do we need to update that policy? So keeping things up to date so that we don't have 10 years from now a policy that's 10 years old and no longer necessarily applicable.
I see Anne Marie's hand, Amy.
Yes, Anne Marie.
Yeah, I don't know if the board goals, but I just would like to see us take more of an active role in keeping an eye on the SU budget and just making sure that that money is being spent. Because it seems like things come to us sort of like here and there, and we approve little things, and as far as the Wethersfield School Board goes, we keep an eye and we're involved in trying to get the budget passed, and so we're all very involved in it. But as far as the SU budget goes, it just seems like we really don't do that much. So I'd like to see us have more active role in the budget.
Yeah, I think we need to have at minimum a quarterly update. How about every other month have an update on our budget and what's encumbered and where we stand on it, so that we're not caught by surprise, which we haven't really been lately. But there's also been, I feel, a little bit of lax in our budget reviews on the SU level. And Bill, you have your hand raised.
I think one thing that's really important about when dealing with money and budgets and things like that is to establish what your goal is first, and then to drive the budget in line with what the goal is. Basically, if we're getting a yearly or quarterly review of where the budget is, that's kind of playing catch up. That is where we are, what we owe, what are we paying. But I agree with the concept in which that the SU budget should be better managed than what I think it is now. But I think the first step is to establish SU goals, and then those goals will then establish what sort of spending that we are going to incur. Yeah.
And those goals are portrait of a graduate and the strategic plan. But then we have to look back at each portion of the strategic plan to see how that is being, where are we? Have we met? What are the indicators that we want for a particular quarter or for a particular goal? And we get really close to that, figuring that out and having it, and then we get distracted by something and fall short, and then we don't get back to looking at a particular portion of the strategic plan, if at all, at the strategic plan, until it's time to, we need to create a new strategic plan. So I think having a portion of every single meeting devoted to a section of the strategic plan, so that we know where we are and how, whether or not we're meeting the indicators, our goals for the strategic plan, and if not, how can we improve it? And just, if we happen to be meeting that particular goal, can we move forward? Can we do even better? But I don't feel that we're even properly addressing on a regular basis our strategic plan. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Amy. I agree with that. And I feel that we often just hear reports on different areas. We don't really discuss whether we're actually meeting goals because we've never made goals before. But we don't actually have a discussion on some of the things that we among ourselves as a board, some of the things that we get reports on. And I think it would be really useful to at least talk about them. And as you know, my other idea was to think about having, when we have our quarterly report on the anti-racism policy, to have just consider having a meeting that's just public participation, and so that we can engage our communities a little bit better than we have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Oh, Rebecca, your hand is raised. Sorry about that.
That's okay, Amy. Well, a couple of things I wanted to bring up. I know that I was nominated for the budget committee as a budget committee member with Colleen and Jamie Turner, and I just wonder. I don't really know what that group does, but I wonder if that group can be part of helping to make, as Anne Marie asked, the budget a little bit more transparent. Again, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the committee does, but that's one thing I wanted to mention. And I also agree with the fact that we have a budget, and we pass it, but then that's it until the next budget comes around. So the idea of like really zeroing in on its connection to the strategic plan and literally coming up with cents and dollars, that may be hard at the beginning, but I think it's that I'm sure the community would love something like that. So I think that's a great idea. And one of my suggestions as a goal for the board is to really look at how do we connect with the community, and clearly our attendance, and I don't know what it was before, but it just wavers. It's up and down, and these are just really serious decisions that we're making here, and it impacts on our community, not only our school community, but our kids go home to their parents, and so I think it's really important for us to find a way to try and reach out to the community and connect with the community in a way like we just haven't. I don't know what that would look like, but maybe we really need to, think of ideas and ways. And I think Dr. Crum spoke to that and shared some suggestions, but I think we really do need to try and reach out to the community, and have them involved in what we're talking about.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mark?
Just in agreement with Rebecca. I think the more transparent we can be with all aspects of our work, the more time we're actually going to save in everything that involves a public forum, as far as not finding ourselves on the defensive. I think the more proactive we can be and say, here's the information. Did you look over this before allegations come? The more time and goodwill we're going to save ourselves.
Thank you. It sounds like having a board retreat, an SU board retreat, to set up some of these goals, and to discuss as a group, what does community engagement mean? What can it look like? How can we have it on a sustainable basis? Because that's a key. I mean, we all have our individual lives, So to have something regular yet sustainable, as far as engaging community, also to see where we are on the strategic plan, and to set quarterly goals of where, or every meeting, to have a calendar for our meeting that we're going to look at this part of the strategic plan. Next meeting, you know, like September, this goal, October, this goal, you know, just to have a regular update to see where we are on the indicators. And if there happen to be goals that the indicators are somewhat vague, I think that could also be part of our retreat discussion. I don't know when anyone is available for said retreat, or where we would have it, or if we would need a campsite with all of our sleeping bags to get through all of these items on a retreat. But I think it's certainly worthwhile to discuss. Let me see, Rebecca's hand is still raised, and Mark, your hand is still raised.
No, Rebecca took it down, Mark took his down.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's part of the challenge, is trying to find a date when, because I don't think these kinds of conversations happen well in the context of a regular board meeting. I think establishing those priorities and goals once a year would be better if we had some extended time, you know, 2 to 3 hours, much like we're doing in Wethersfield and Heartland and Mount Scottney, to just kind of get those goals set and established. You've listed about, you know, 6 or 7 items that
I know
that I wrote down, which is good. I mean, all of those are important, but I think we need to establish the priorities, some of the indicators, the strategic plan. From an administrative standpoint, the strategic plan is our guidepost. That's what we spend almost every administrative team meeting looking at that, analyzing that, trying to set up, you know, so and it's nice to hear tonight that nobody wants to stray from that, because we put a lot of time into that. It's just getting good community input, finding the proper forum to do that, and setting our goals so that we then can do those quarterly reports. One last comment about budget, and this is Rebecca, Colleen, and Jamie, especially. I think Jamie's on. I thought I saw her. Yeah, there's Jamie. Yeah, there's been some talk about trying to start the budget process earlier. We've had that conversation before to give us time to really do some analyzing, and I think it is better analyzed initially in a small group rather than a group like this. That's difficult. So I've talked to Ed about trying to get things started, you know, in August, which would be early for us. We normally don't start till toward the end of September, and then we concurrently start the local budgets in October, early November. But I'd like to start the cycle earlier so that we could do that, really take a look at that. We're going to talk some to that in the individual board retreats so that people know how the SU money is being spent. But I think because there's 2 parts to budget, right? There's budget development, and then there's budget management. And the development and developing that budget has to, you know, it needs to be an inclusive process, and it can't be run by, you know, just by wit and whim. We need to have a process, and there's a lot of money now that's housed at the SU, and it's and that's why I think we've had great attendance at our SU meetings, but we need to take a look at this budget early and really analyze it and see where it is. I mean, it's most of that budget is servicing all of our schools and all of our kids. So we just need to know how that's happening and why that's happening. So my proposal to Colleen and I just talked to Ed about this, Colleen and Rebecca and Jamie, is that we get started. We'll reach out to you about dates you're available, and to just have an initial budget session where we line up the strategic plan. We also look at, you know, last year's budget, any recommended changes, and just get a draft so that the board could have that by end of August, early September. I think that then we could have a couple of sessions as a board about what this, you know, how this is going to unfold. But I
So-
think the retreat date is critical. I just don't know. That's the problem. Summertime gets difficult for folks. But if there's if you want to take a shot at it, or we could doodle poll something. Lori's, we've got a new doodle poll.
Yeah, I think that would be good, and have it following the individual district boards so that there can be a spokesperson from each of those boards to say, this is our district goals and how does that fit into the SU? And it could be that as we're all sitting there, when Wethersfield says, these are our goals, and Heartland and Mount Escutney would also say, well, those are our goals too. So they then become a greater SU board goal. And I think having that discussion at a retreat and then looking at how we can monitor the strategic plan and where we are financially on a regular basis would be good topics, as well as the community engagement. So I think
The other thing,
when is the Wethersfield and Heartland, when are those being done?
Wethersfield is July 6th, I think, if it's Tuesday. It's the Tuesday, July 6th.
Christine, do you know, or I don't think Nikki's here. When is the Heartland Retreat?
It's in July, I want to say.
It's the 15th.
15th of July? Okay.
Yeah, I think. Colleen can confirm. But
That sounds right.
That's
No,
yeah.
That's right. I just looked at the calendar.
Okay.
And then Mount Escutney, did we set a retreat date?
I have no idea. I was going to ask Elizabeth.
Yes, we did. I think it's like August 4th. Like, check. Hold on. Hold, please. Oops, that's July. It's the 9th.
Of
9th.
Of August.
9th.
August, okay. Yeah. Again, I'm not suggesting this, but we have traditionally not had an SU meeting in July, probably because all these other meetings are going on and people are vacationing and we're getting those board goals done at the individual districts. And then we could do something in mid-August and set our goals for the school year or for the upcoming year.
Right, because all of our individual districts will have had their retreat.
Yeah.
And we could have just a mega meeting, SU meeting in August to discuss those retreats and
I
to
hate
implement
mega
our
meetings.
goals.
Scott hates mega meetings.
No, we should meet regularly, even in July. If we can get a quorum, we should do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, if we can do it, I'm fine with that. It's been a little bit of a struggle in July, but we could try it.
Yeah, I wasn't saying mega meeting as in all of the board business. I meant mega meeting as in our retreat to go over all of these things. But if we met in July, then we wouldn't have so much of board business to do in August.
Our regular July meeting would be, let's look at it here. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, would be July 26th.
Okay.
And I know I'm fine with that. I don't know. People have different vacation schedules. If people are okay with that, then we'll stay with that. You know, I tend to agree with Scott. If nothing else, that would be a way to finalize and plan sort of our
retreat.
retreat agenda. Yep. And
Yep.
then
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
two of
But we
those-
need to.
Yep.
We're on board goals now, not setting our
Right,
next
exactly.
agenda. So let's not get distracted. So would everyone be okay with moving on with our current agenda knowing that we're going to, at our July meeting, we will discuss the topics of our retreat. And now we could move on to the recovery plan discussion.
Yeah, and I think Angie, you're going to lead this this conversation, correct?
Well, I
Maybe
am.
not.
I thought, I said to myself, you're going to love what I have to tell you about ARP ESSER 3. So anyway, before I get started, I just wanted to give you some updates. Our recovery plan draft is still in the process of being reviewed. The same team member that reviewed our ESSER 2 budget approves the recovery plan. Our ESSER 2 budget was approved, but just like our ESSER 1 budget, those budgets can be amended for a certain period of time. Our ESSER 2 budget, we can amend, I think, until September 30th, 2023. So ESSER 1, I think, is at the end of, well, I have a table in my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can share with you a PowerPoint, a slideshow that I put together so that I could remember all the things that I wanted to share with you. So let me present this. ARP ESSER stands for the American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary Education Relief Fund. It is the third bucket of money that we are receiving from the federal government to help recover from the pandemic. I thought you would appreciate this slide because it provides you with the period of performance, or basically the begin date and end date of the each grant period, so you know when monies can be expended through. ESSER 1, all of them started when the shutdown happened, March 13th, 2020. And our application process, you can see that 20 March 2021 was when ESSER 1 was due. ESSER 2 is not completely due until November 1st, and then ESSER 3 has yet to be determined. The date of the fund return, what this column is telling you is if we don't spend our funding, that would be when it would start to be, well, is that? I don't think that's what that is. I'm sorry, I don't know what that column means. And then the amendment deadline is right here. And then stakeholder engagement is the process that the AOE and the federal government have outlined for us, and it's only required for ARP ESSER 3. So that being said, we have 3 plans that we have started, completed, and have in various forms of completion. The AOE is doing the best they can to align these things because they understand the amount of effort that has to go into these plans. So the recovery plan is an agency of education mandate. Our plan was submitted on June 16th, and we're still awaiting approval. Public comment, meaningful consultation, or board approval was not required, although we did open the plan for public comment through June 10th. I do intend to put those frequently asked questions. There wasn't a lot of questions in the survey on the website, but I do intend to put a frequently asked questions page up there so that the people that took the time to respond get some answers to their questions. That we included stakeholders in the recovery team in this way. Our team included our administrators from all our schools. It included staff through consultation with our union representatives and through a survey. We met with the union representatives pretty much weekly the last few months of school, and last summer and through the fall, I think. We also were meeting with union representation and also surveying staff during the winter months on their wellness. Students were represented through the survey, and community members were represented through the comment form. And we understand that we can do better on this moving forward. And I think you will see how this plays out in the ARP ESSER 3 requirements. The reopening plan, you're probably thinking, reopening? Well, we've been reopened since last September, and that is true. But keep in mind that there are many schools across the nation that never did go back to full in-person. And so because these are federal funds, the reopening plan is a U.S. Education Department mandate. We have to have a plan for the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. In fact, we have a plan. We just don't have it called a formal recovery plan. Just like when we had to do a plan after the shutdown, we had to do a continuity of learning plan. We don't have like a formal reopening plan because Dr. Baker was sending out weekly updates about what our plan would be. And then in the fall, we really did have a very a concerted effort to share with our community our efforts for keeping children safe and what drop off and pickup would look like, what the classroom structure would be. And we developed a handbook that would describe the ways that we were going to approach cases, when cases were reported, and communicating with the community, et cetera. So all that information is available on our website, but you really have to dig for it. And that's really what the Agency of Education wants us to do, is to have it easily accessed and organized in such a way. So I am planning to do a separate page that will just address reopening. That'll include links and resources to the things that we've already provided so that our public can have opportunity to see it all in one place. And then there will be a Google form on that web page so that public can comment on any of the information that they see on that page. The AOE encourages us to use the existing recovery and reopening plan, and they've provided us with a reopening plan checklist based on the interim final rule, which is what the law is from the U.S. Department of Education. The LEAs, which is us, Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union Central Office, must make information available on our website in an understandable and uniform format to the extent practicable, written in a language that parents can understand, or if not practicable, orally translated, and upon request by a parent who is an individual with a disability, provided in an alternative format accessible to that parent. They want this information on the website. I think the deadline that they wanted it on the website was 30 days after the release of ARP ESSER funds. WSESU received our allocation. That doesn't mean the funds were in our bank account. That we received our allocation notification May 25th, and we completed phase 1, which was just to write one line in the application, basically saying that we intend to use those funds. And then phase 2 is what we don't have a deadline for, although the U.S. Federal government has said 90 days, which would make the ARP ESSER plan due August 23rd. So those timelines, I think you'll understand the crunch of those timelines, and they seem very fast approaching and are going to make some of the things I say coming up a little bit more challenging. This one website I wanted to show you from Orange East. The good news about this is that everybody in the state of Vermont's in the same boat, so people are sharing their the things that they've done, and this is what the reopening plan, our reopening page might look like. I think I will copy it exactly the same format for our community, very straightforward, and it includes some of the information that's already on our webpage, so I will be looking through that to create that webpage. So finally, what is ARP ESSER 3? It's a U.S. mandate. It's specific to these funds from ARP ESSER. 20% has to be set aside to measure and address learning loss, which is lost instructional time. Meaningful consultation during the development of the plan. I'll describe that a little bit. We need to plan this meaningful consultation before August 15th. So when you were talking about dates, that's what I was thinking about. We need to have public comment and input. We need to post the plan with a Google survey form. So that's one way that will get input. What I'm going to ask from you tonight is ideas for what would be best for our communities to offer as a way to have meaningful input. It's due within 90 days of the ARPESR award, and that would be the August 23rd date, although the Agency of Ed has not confirmed that is a hard date for us. I think they're looking for some flexibility on that because this is the summer months and they recognize post-pandemic summer, people are taking advantage of being able to move about the country. Phase 1 allotment, they did not fully fund the ARPESR. We got 1.723 million, and of our 2.6 million, that is ARPESR funding. Phase 2 of the ARPESR has not opened yet. So when is the application for ESSER 3 funds open? This came directly from AOE guidance. We have what we have right now is the 2/3 of the final. What we have right now is 2/3. The final 1/3 of the allocation is tied up with the state plan. So this will not open until we have this last third of the allocation. So what the federal government has required states to do, they're still trying to figure that out. They have not hired, I read today that the Agency of Education has not hired any additional staff to deal with the additional workload of managing these funds. What they've done is repurposed positions for people to be able to manage the funds. As soon as they have the money, they will open up the application once the money is in the bank. The application is due. So this is what they said. The date's in flux right now until the last third of our ARPESR is figured out with the AOE's state plan. We will be able to give you a much firmer set of dates in July, but I would not anticipate that you will need to submit your application by August 23rd. In other words, we don't think this will be a hard and fast due date. So that's important for us to know as we figure out how to best engage our communities in this conversation for ARPESR funding and what will be best for our community. So allowable uses, and I'm going to go quickly through these slides, but I just wanted to show you what some of the categories of uses are for ARPESR. It's basically very similar to what we could use the other ESSER funds for. Elementary and Secondary Education Act, that's all the title grants. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act of Special Education, Adult Education and Family Literacy, Carl Perkins, which is Career and Tech Ed, coordination of preparedness and response efforts, because think about these funds are post-dated. So anything that we spent since March 13th, 2020, we can apply with the apply ARPESR 3 funds to those expenses. Okay. Activities to address the unique needs of low-income children or students, children with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, students experiencing homelessness, and foster care youth. And that gives me an opportunity right now to talk about our summer activities. It might say this, I think it does. Just a second, I'll wait till I get up there. Systems to improve preparedness and response, training in sanitation for our staff, purchasing of supplies for sanitation, coordinating and implementing activities during long-term closures. Hopefully that will not be an issue in FY22. Purchasing educational technology that will serve especially our underserved students, low income and children with disabilities, mental health services and supports, planning and implementing activities related to summer learning and supplemental after-school programs. So here I want to tell you that they specifically mention that it includes addressing the needs of low-income students, children with disabilities, English learners, migrant students, students experiencing homeless, and children in foster care. And so Katie and I were looking back at the numbers, and I want to invite Katie just to tell us what we found out in our data. And sorry we didn't have this ahead of time for tonight's meeting. But Katie, do you want to unmic and unmute and tell us?
So
about this year's summer program in terms of percentages?
yes. So out of the 116 students, we did some math behind the scenes. Only 40% of those students are identified as
I'm not sure she's still on because I can't see the screen.
If you mute yourself,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear her.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody else could hear me, but you couldn't, Angie, sorry. So 40% of the students identified in the Summer Academy are on IEPs, and out of those students, only half of them were identified as students through the IEP process. So our process of identifying students was approximately 80% of them were identified through our regular recovery plan process, through TMP scores or teacher identification. So I just wanted to bring that up. We hadn't spent a lot of time trying to disaggregate IEP students versus non-students because that's the whole point of the recovery plan. So good questions that we had earlier. Angie and I did, as I said, did some legwork behind the scenes so that we could hopefully show folks that this is a recovery plan for all students. All students are regular students first. Some of them may also happen to be also on an IEP, but that's not how they were identified for the summer. And it's nice to have the data behind that.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, that was a little clunky. This is address allowable cost N, which really goes through the bulk of learning loss, addressing learning loss for all students, administering high quality assessments, and evidence-based activities, providing information assistance for parents and families to help support those children, and then tracking student attendance, especially during distance education. Hopefully, again, that won't be an issue for most of our students next year. Other allowable costs are facilities repairs and improvement, indoor air quality improvements, public health strategies for implementing public health protocols, and activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of services. So that being said, just considering all the wide range of uses for the ESSER 3 funds, I thought, well, what is meaningful consultation? And meaningful consultation is something that we've had to participate in for the federal monies for title funds. And I have to admit that we haven't been very great at it. COVID in particular this last year, having family engagement evenings and opportunities for our title schools, which is Heartland and Windsor, to have family nights where we were inviting our families in to talk about the program. We haven't been able to do that, and that is a goal for next year for me. Excuse me a second. It's hot in here. But the Every Student Succeeds Act defines timely and meaningful consultation as a, excuse me a sec, opportunity for all students. This kind of goes into non-public school students and teachers' participation in equitable services. That's for another category that I have to think about for federal spending. But what I wanted to point out on this slide, the LEA must schedule consultation with sufficient notice and time for preparation for both parties. The consultation should occur well before the implementation of services and continue throughout the implementation and assessment of services. Meaningful consultation is consultation that provides a genuine opportunity for all parties to express their views and to have their views seriously considered, as well as to discuss options for effective programming based on the assessed needs. Now, this is saying non-public school, but it's for the same. It's basically gives you the idea of what meaningful consultation needs to provide. It really makes me think of the process that we followed for our portrait of the graduate, where we had all 4 communities represented in a room together. We had students, we had community members, community leaders, as well as residents. We had people with children in the school, people with children coming to the school, like who were babies and infants, and babies and toddlers and who weren't in the school yet. So I think that's the example of what meaningful consultation could look like for Windsor Southeast. And then this set of questions would be something that we could potentially ask in a forum of sorts. How we communicated our needs clearly. So it would involve presenting data for the participants and then getting their feedback on it and their ideas on that. Are our goals clear? How is it clear how our actions will help us achieve our goals? And I think a lot of what you guys were talking about earlier with the SU board having clear goals, this meaningful consultation seems to align very well with that. Excuse me a second. Then, of course, being clear about resources and how they support our plan and what our concerns are. For example, one of the questions that a community member had on the recovery plan, it might have been on the ESSER 2 plan, was this person noticed that there was no additional HCRS clinician on the ESSER 2 funds. And that doesn't mean that we aren't adding additional additional HCRS school-based clinician support. We actually are. It's just coming from a different funding source. So we can't be thinking that the ESSER ESSER funds are the only bucket of money that we're using to support children in this post-pandemic time. We're using all kinds of all our funds. So one of the things I wanted to point out to you is some changes that I made to the curriculum and instruction website. I will first go to the recovery planning portion of the website, and I have added in an updated draft of the ESSER plan. And you can still, the comment form is still open there if our communities want to make comments on that. And then what I added that's new here, again, shamelessly, using the same format that Middlebury Roxbury Public Schools used. I did check with the superintendent there and got permission. So I just liked how they laid out all the information about what ESSER funds are and what I'm not going to spend all night, more time tonight going through the website. I think it's very well done. It gives you links to additional information, but right here in this section gives us some ideas for how the Middlebury Roxbury school system was thinking about meaningful consultation. And at the top of the page, it just starts with this message that the WSESU will be seeking to engage with the community this summer regarding plans for ESSER 3 funds. Please read through this webpage for information about ESSER and to find important next steps to providing feedback on ESSER 3 funds. So their process, and this is only an example, and I hope that I made it very clear that this is a very tentative list of activities to be planned for summer 2021, all pending SU board approval based on tonight's meeting. In mid-July, so I just took the time frame from Middlebury Roxbury. The SU administrators are conducting or will be conducting a needs assessment to align the district goals in relation to how to spend ESSER 3 funds. The good news is we've done a lot of this work already for the recovery plan. In mid-July, we'll review a presentation of the needs assessment and district goals in relation to how to spend ESSER 3 funds and provide feedback via a public survey. Both of this information will be posted to our webpage. In late July, we'll attend a public input session, potentially a family-style dinner at one of our schools. You know how much Craig loves to do barbecues. And if you feed people, they will come out. Open to all members of our community, and it'll be advertised in our social media. See, there's Middlebury RPS. I missed that one, but I will take that out. On this webpage and through our other communication avenues that we have. And then in early August, our school board, a meeting of the school board directors will be to present the plan for our ESSER 3 to the board. And then they were planning a second public input session in mid-August. So that was one at the end of August and one at the end of August, as well as at the end of July. So a lot to think about. And I think what I wanted to discuss further with the board was potential dates and your ideas about a process moving forward. I certainly respect that it is important for us to get this input from our communities. It's a requirement. This is our community's children, and we want to make sure that we are all on this, all together on this, even if we don't always agree on what the best way to proceed is. So at this time, I'm going to stop talking and let you guys ask any questions you might have or ideas.
Well, first of all, so David, I see your hand, but first of all, there had been some comments prior to this meeting that Courtney McKegg from Mount Ascutney Hospital had some comments she wanted to make in terms of, I think, the recovery plan or something along those lines. So Courtney, if you wanted to unmute and just provide the information that you wanted to.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have information to provide. Hi, Amy, and hi, Angie. Thanks so much for that really thorough PowerPoint. That was excellent because, I don't know what all those acronyms mean. I received Dr. Baker's email today updating some agenda items, and I thought, oh, this might be a good opportunity to start having this discussion. As many of you know, I anchor in family work, prevention in particular. I sit at a lot of community tables where the concerns around child family well-being is being discussed and how that might, how we might collaborate as communities to heal together. We've had a collective trauma, so there's no one who didn't experience it. So I don't necessarily have anything to present. I just thought this might be an opportunity to open that discussion and to learn more about what schools are already planning and what opportunities there might be to bring in all the resources that would be available to the school community as a part of the health system. So like I said, there's a lot of discussion around this, specifically around housing and basic needs, as well as, the trauma that school personnel have encountered personally and what that does to how they interact with their classrooms. And then it just really, I think for a lot of us, helped us kind of think through this idea of how there's no more us and them. There's a lot of us and them unspoken in the cultures of systems. And this is an opportunity where we've all experienced something. We all are in the same storm and riding in different boats, but we're all kind of coming to shore at the same time in this quote unquote new normal as we move forward. And so I'm here just to kind of advocate on the part of some of the groupthink that I'm a part of in the community around how do we maybe rethink the idea of community engagement and family engagement around the collective trauma. Are there ways to, rather than having separate in-services for school personnel, that all adults who are in the school, including those who are carers who are doing remote or hybrid or various other ways of teaching their own children from home, coming together and kind of in that shared humanity way to think about how do we heal, and in that healing process, hopefully we would have enhanced learning recovery. So I don't have anything to present. I'm just here to advocate for us all doing it together.
Great. Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging me.
Yep. David.
Yeah, and this more or less speaks a bit to Courtney's point, but also to that previous discussion we had as an SU board around establishing our goals, some level of transparency throughout our budget process, kind of those reports on our strategic plan. As Angie was speaking, I was thinking, I don't think this summer, maybe I'm wrong, people are going to come out to 4 or 5 forums. I mean, I think if this work could integrate so that, whatever we establish, we could gather whatever data we needed to gather. If we had a couple of, if we could set dates for a couple of Craig's special barbecues and wrap that around some of the ESSER stuff, but also kind of indicate, the supervisory union board goals and where we're trying to head and the strategic plan. And I mean, again, I don't know that we'll get 500 people. I don't know if we'll get 50 people. We worked our tails off during that strategic planning process, and we were able to get 60 people in one room. But I'll tell you, that was 3 months worth of work of reaching out and sometimes almost harassing people. But I think anything we could do to dovetail this work, what Courtney's talking about, what Angie's talking about, and what this SU board is talking about in terms of our 4 communities coming together around, a common goal or goals.
I agree. Courtney?
One of the initiatives or ideas that's on the table with the Dartmouth Trauma Interventions Research Center is to have a regional-wide forum. I know this idea, there's just so much to do and everyone's feeling exhausted by what we just all went through. But I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of designate some sort of conduit, like myself, who could bring what's happening, or at least some sense of the ideas and goals, to some of these other tables, rather than trying to collect everybody in one place. I'm a part of a Strengthening Families Network initiative. We all know that the mental health needs right now are above and beyond what's available in terms of capacity. So we're talking a lot about peer support. And so what we're wondering is, there's the Community Health Improvement Plan work groups that have been working now for 3 years. The one that I'm a part of, Strengthening Families Network, is promoting Strengthening Families, which is a framework with 5 protective factors, all of which relate to what we're all doing. So enhancing the number and quality of playgroups available to families with young children, as well as a Circle of Security parenting course. And while those are not direct service, those are definitely forums where people can come and get support. So informal access to mental health supports. So because our core aim is to enhance social connectedness, and then the pandemic hit, we really have been pivoting and pivoting and pivoting, as you all have. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to bring some of the questions or opportunities to provide public comment to some of these other tables, rather than trying to collect everybody at once, because that seems very challenging.
I wanted to say, Courtney, that our pastor guidance is we can reach out. They are encouraging us to reach out to our community organizations, but also even as far as a state level organization. So the networks that you're talking about, would be totally appropriate for us to be working together, what that looks like. And I do think that you touched on it. A very important point is what the communication plan is. So we need to identify the communication plan, and because we know that the best of intentions don't make things happen. It's when you have a really strong plan and people behind it who are making it happen, make it happen.
Thank you, Angie and Courtney. Rebecca, your hand is raised.
Angie, I do want to thank you. That was a pretty powerful PowerPoint and lots of work. I just can see how you just got your hands full in just really trying to make this work. I thought your idea of engaging the community, and I know that you try and do that through letters to parents, and I was thinking that maybe one thing that we can do, I don't know what that looks like, but it is different. I know that at this point, the school facilities are open to the public. So it's possible to have folks come in, not necessarily going through all these questions before they walk in. And rather than just getting that information, putting the information on the website, and why can teachers who've been hired to work with students at this point, when they're having that contact with parents, that immediate contact, sort of just maybe even share that document with them? And it doesn't have to be a very in-depth document, but it can be a document in which speaks to, we want your input. We want to know what you're thinking. And not only would I give them, I know this is a lot of work, but I would probably also give them an envelope so that they can take their time and write down what is it that they would like to say, as opposed to being rushed. I'm just thinking that's one thing. I know that I attend the recreation center in the morning, and at 8 o'clock, I'm seeing all these parents drop all these kids off. Wouldn't it be great to have someone there? And maybe it's an opportunity for even a board member to be there and sort of like, hey, I'm a board member. We're in the process of trying to get information, trying to get parent involvement, community input on this. I'd like to give this to you. It's an explanation of some of the things we're thinking about, and you can write your comments down, or you can even, but connecting with the people. We haven't talked to them in over a year. We haven't really had that physical contact with them. We've had these roadblocks, and justifiably so, because of COVID. So that it's not like they were able to come into our schools or anything. So we were really limited in whatever contact we've had with these people. So it's been on a website, which is okay. I can go through a website, but to be honest, sometimes I go through those websites and I'm like, oh, let me just get to the bottom. What's the bottom line here? And I'm sure for parents with all of their other things they need to do, it's like, you got to be kidding me, get to a website and do all this. But I'm just thinking, how's about trying to engage the community in a different way than, or maybe just adding another way of engaging them. I really do like the idea of having some sort of something. I don't know if it's a barbecue or something, but inviting them and saying, this is another opportunity to talk about what's on your mind. I think we want to connect with the community. As Courtney mentioned, there's just been a lot of assault on the community overall, and we've been physically separated. And I think that, and I don't know if everyone's going to be comfortable with that, but I think it's time to get at least a little bit personal with them. So I'm all for what you presented. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think as we, at our next meeting, as we talk about goals and how we want to engage community at our retreat, but also in between now and then, would it be outrageous at this meeting because of the dates, kind of the deadlines that Angie has, if we were to put a subcommittee together to work out what a small forum would look like, or how to implement something like what Rebecca was saying, having a couple of board members at the rec center or at wherever, just handing information to community. Would that be outrageous? Elizabeth.
Hi, I have an idea. It's a very short deadline though, which is what about the 4th of July, the celebrations that are taking place on the 4th of July? Is there any way to get people out there to talk to people? I mean, that's a big few gatherings.
Well, that makes sense. There could be, I know at Heartland, Old Home Day, there will be tables out on the field. So perhaps there could be a supervisory union table and just have information to hand out, with the understanding that the person who is at that table is only one board member and cannot make any decisions or say, oh yeah, that's, about all one board member can say is, thank you for the information. I will relay it and we'll talk about it as a board. I mean, that's a very important reminder that one board member cannot make any sort of claims or statement saying, yes, the board will do this. But I don't know what people's openness. I'm already at a table at Heartland, and I cannot muddy those waters. So it would have to be other people.
The other thing I was thinking, Amy and Angie, you and I haven't talked about this, but and that was a great PowerPoint, and this is very complicated. I think what we need, because one of the things I heard in what you said is that, any communication has to be understandable by the public, right? And, there's a lot of jargon in there, and there's a lot of acronyms and a lot, I think one of the things, you and I can talk about, Angie, is whether or not there's a way, and, and Courtney, if you wanted to help us, whether or not there's a way to write like a very brief executive summary, 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs that just kind of outlines what we're trying to do and the goals we're trying to set. And then again, that could be disseminated at the 4th of July, it could be disseminated at the rec center, if somebody wanted to do that. But I think that would be small committee work and availability of people to do that. And I do think it's important, for it to be either a board member or a community member, right? But Angie and I could work. Well, I'm saying we could potentially work on some sort of an executive summary that could be handed out, could be discussed without, as Amy said, making decision points or really just getting feedback. Maybe providing some sort of a link at the bottom or a 3-question little survey on the back, just something that gets the conversation going.
2 things that come to my mind are that what I've noticed is that the I guess it's the IT team, but there's more use of the school's Twitter handles. So I just think that going with your information where the public is, where the communities are, And so in this respect, I mean, social media platforms is a good one. Number two, obviously the meal program's about to get going, and hopefully there's a lot of families from the area coming every day or a few times a week to that. So that would be I like a handout idea. You know, maybe a regular employee could just say, hey, we got this information over here. This central office got ready for us. And lastly, as far as like Old Home Day goes, people pretty much know that I'm only going to talk about school board stuff, and they steer clear of me, so I'm not going to do that.
Thank you, Scott. Anne Marie, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Weathersfield doesn't really have anything like that, I think, planned for summer. I don't know if any of the other Weathersfield people on here know of something, but I can't, like, we can't just go to a rec center here or to, we don't have like a big planned 4th of July celebration. So it would have to be something designed specifically for, a community forum. And we need to give people notice, for what it would be. And so I think the sooner we can kind of work this out, as far as Angie's schedule went, the deadlines she has went, it seems like it's coming up really fast. So I'd be willing to be on a committee to help facilitate that.
Are there any other volunteers for this subcommittee? But I also think that what Courtney just put in the chat and what Scott said was having information handouts for community meal drop-off when the lunches are being dropped off, because that's happening, I believe, in all of our communities.
Yeah, I think that could happen. No.
There's not a ton of participation. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, David, but my sons did it today, and they said only 2 people came and got lunches to the one drop-off here in Weathersfield. So I don't know if that's going to really get the message out that much.
Yeah, who knows, really? I mean, this was day one, and like I said, there were some schedule changes, but I mean, it's just another vehicle to see. And by the way, I think all of what we're talking about now in terms of getting information out is in addition to some sort of a formal, I think what Angie's saying is we are going to need some sort of a formal forum to get that feedback, but that's a whole different point. But I think a small committee would be good at only 2, 3, 4 people. We've learned how to do these things virtually, so it's not like we have to all get together somewhere if you want, but I think I'm hearing Courtney say she's willing. I heard Anne Marie say she's willing. Is there anybody else that would be willing to join this happy group with Angie? And
yeah, and
I can do it, but only if it's this week. and then
well, that puts a time limit on it. That's
I think someone from each district.
It would be nice if each town were represented. Yeah. Well, right now we've got Weathersfield and West Windsor, because Courtney, you're in West Windsor, right? Or am I messing that up? Yes, she's in West Windsor. So we need a Windsor and we need a Heartland rep.
I can.
Rebecca?
Okay, so we have Rebecca.
That's good. So that takes care of Mount Scottney and Windsor. And then we need a Heartland rep.
I'd also be willing to reach out to the parents at the recreation center, Angie.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of the things we can.
Yeah, all joking aside, I could do that. I'm assuming this is an SU committee, so it's not just any district board member. So is that what I hear?
But yeah, it's an SU subcommittee, but of course we want representation. From all the communities of the supervisory union.
I think we have a Heartland rep. I think I heard Scott volunteers. So
yeah. Okay.
So that's good. Angie, what's your schedule this week? I mean, I'm in Tuesday and Wednesday. Sure. Are you in tomorrow?
Oops, sorry.
Whoops, there we go.
I'm in through a Thursday.
Okay, good, yeah. So maybe you and I can, sounds like we've got 4 reps. I'm hearing Courtney McCaig, rather. I hear Anne Marie, I hear Scott, and I hear Rebecca. So I don't know if you wrote those all down, Angie, but you and I will talk in the morning and we'll see. We'll reach out to the 4 of you and see if there's a way to get the initial information out to people in a readable form at everything from 4th of July celebrations to rec centers to lunch drop-off. I think that would be a good start. And then I think we need to think about a forum date. And I don't know when we want to talk about that. We don't have to talk about that tonight, but we will need some sort of a.
Another place would be to give the questionnaire to everyone that goes to the summer academy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what somebody was saying that earlier, that we could, we're going to be interfacing with 116 students and we know their families. And I think we could figure out a way to get that executive summary out and ask for some feedback. And those are the kids that are, like we know that those are the kids both academically and socially and emotionally are in need. So yeah, we could use that vehicle as well.
And Rebecca, let's see if I can, let's see.
Yeah, you're on, Nancy. Now you're muted, but you were.
Okay. Rebecca, I go to the rec center daily. And so if you ever need any help, I'm there, both pick up and drop off. We're usually a little late though.
I can't believe that, Nancy.
Yeah.
And Courtney also mentioned in the chat that information could be dropped off at the local libraries and then placed on the tables for the porchside pickup. So it sounds like we have a plan, or at least a plan for creating a plan. And I look forward to hearing updates. So if this subcommittee could meet soon with Angie to help Angie out, and then if David, if you could get back to us to let all the SU know.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think we are ready to move on. And that would be items for action. And we've already done some action. We approved a policy and we created a subcommittee for community engagement on the ESSER, etc. So I think we're done with action.
Yeah, we might accept. Do we need to approve those new hires, Katie? I mean, do you? I mean, I don't think you have to put the list up again, but do you want to read those names again, or I was not at the last SU meeting, so I don't know if they were. Well, I'm just talking teachers now, not support staff. But
I can read them again.
Yeah, just so Wendy can get them in the minutes.
Let me pull them back up. Okay. So we have special educators, Sarah Wellman.
Sarah Wellman.
Sarah Bolus.
How do you spell Bolus?
Bullis.
Okay.
Stephanie Murray. Naomi Goodwin. And Chris Keefe. And Patricia Acadia. Those are all the special educators, and the last one is Ryan Labella as a BCBA.
Okay, and I think we could do that as one motion, Amy.
Okay, and I also saw in the chat that Wendy was going to ask Katie to put those names either so she has them spelled correctly. And
I was just about to cut and paste them and put them in the chat. That worked for you, Wendy? All right. Now I just got to find where the chat is again. New things. Okay.
Right. So I will take a motion to approve the appointment of the aforementioned teachers and staff for the supervisory union.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was Rebecca. Second?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor of approving the appointment of the staff by for the supervisory union, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. They are approved. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
And we are,
I think it's just to go into, we're setting the next agenda, but I think we already did that pretty much.
yeah, talking the
About, yes.
the update and on oh my gosh, the subcommittee update and the
retreat update.
and the retreat update.
Yeah.
And then anything that comes up in between.
Yeah, and I think we would also add the budget update just to I know Ed's anxious to give the year-end summary and to talk about starting the new budget process.
Okay.
I think that's enough if we're going to
I
get.
think so too.
We're going to talk about the retreat.
So we don't have a mega. The retreat will be our mega time together. Okay. And that meeting is July 26th, correct?
Hold on, I think I just sent out the invite, so I think it's the 26th. Yeah. Yeah, 26th.
Okay.
And we have to have one
Without-
board member in person, just to remind everybody, and then certainly we can work that out before we get there. I think it's better until Larry, I think I've said this in my email, but until Larry gets that hybrid equipment, I think the lesser amount in person, you can see even with just Angie and Elizabeth there, it's hard to keep that mute button joggling back and forth. So I think it's better to stay virtual, everybody else.
Okay. So thank you, David, and thank you everyone who is here. And now I will take a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of negotiations.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Wendy, I'll send you out the final time. I don't think it's going to be too long here, but